So I got my book, Grateful Kids, Raising Grateful Kids in an Entitled World by Kristen Welch. And I've read chapter 1, and while it's fresh in my mind, I wanted to make a video. Oh, I also read the introduction. I wanted to make a video, and then I'll just make another video when I read chapter 2 and combine them for the first video on September 14th. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed. I'm sorry, my doggy. Little girl. So the first chapter was titled Wants versus Needs. And it's funny she talks about Jim Gaffigan because he's not my favorite comedian, but I do enjoy a little bit. There are some lines he crosses that I'm not a fan of. My favorite comedian is Brian Regan, hands down. I like some of Jim Gaffigan's stuff, but he does cross a few lines I'm not thrilled about. But I know exactly which joke she's talking about with the hotel. And yeah, you know, like we get spoiled, and entitlement, it's like this, if we're not careful, we can so easily think we deserve and we should have. I know very specifically in my life, personally, a time where I struggled with entitlement, and praise the Lord, identified it and was able to battle it, was when my second child was born. I had my first child in a wonderful routine where he would go to bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock every night, sleep, and I had my evening with my husband, a few hours to myself. It was just nice. And then number 2 comes along, and he stays up till like 10:30 and 11 every night, and then needs me to nurse him, and cries and won't stop crying and wants to nurse every hour instead of every 2 like I planned, and all these things, these inconveniences, motherhood. And I remember struggling with entitlement to a degree that I hadn't before. I was like a brat, and thankfully it only lasted like 2 days, and I realized, wait a minute, this isn't going away anytime soon. I better get my brain in check and realize that if I keep down this path, I'm going to get resentful and bitter towards this child, towards my role. Maybe my marriage would be affected. It was just like, hold on, sweetie. And I'm glad. I was very thankful that the Lord revealed that to me. But we can fall into that trap, man. It's scary. Some of the things she touched on with the American dream, and you know, the sad reality that America is like, everything is about stuff, 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 keeping up with the Joneses. What do you have? What do you have? I want that because they have it. What do you do? I want to do that because you do it. It's just this horrible trap. And I don't know. It's just really, it's hard to watch, and it's sad to see. And it's all around us, like she said, even in the church. And it's something that, praise the Lord, I have really guarded myself against and my children against. I know it'll get harder as they get older. They're going to start noticing more. Right now, because we homeschooled, they don't notice that much. Like, those kids have this or they do this, because they're not at school hearing what everybody has and does and seeing what everybody has. And it's a little bit easier right now, but they're getting more and more aware. They're older, and the older they get, they'll be even more aware. And, you know, even other homeschoolers or kids at church, they're going to see like, oh, they have that and they do that and we don't. And there might be conversations here and there where it comes up, and that's where I have to remind myself it doesn't matter. And I mean, we've already had miniature versions of these conversations. Well, if this person does this, and we'll say, well, every family decides different things for themselves, and that's what they've decided, and this is what we've decided, and that's just what we're gonna do, okay? And we can so easily fall into the lie of thinking that our kids are missing out or feeling guilty that we're not giving them everything that they want. But you guys, if we did, how is that going to build their character? How is immediate gratification going to build patience and instill hard work ethic in our children? It's not. And so I make my kids wait. I make my kids earn money and save money for something that they want. And they have to work and they get paid. They get paid $2 a week for doing all their chores. And if they do something extra, they'll get 50 cents. Unless it's huge, then they'll get an extra dollar. But that's as much as they'll get in 1 week. And that might be a lot, but we only have 2 kids. So we can do that. It's $4 a week. If we had 4 or 5 kids, maybe they would get $1 a week, you know? But they have to learn to take pride in their work. And how are we going to teach them that if we just give them everything for free when they ask for it immediately in abundance? You know, life lessons, character lessons. And the Lord can use those disappointments, and the Lord can use those times of waiting to teach them so much. And so why would we rob them of that? You know, we have this conversation pretty frequently, wants versus needs. We'll like stand in the living room and say, so what do we need in this room? And it's like, nothing. Okay, let's go to the dining room. What do we need in this room, or we'll die if we don't have it physically? Nothing. Okay, let's go to the kitchen. You know, like we do that because the kids, and it's so fun for them. They'll say like, we need a sofa. I'm like, no, we don't. If we don't have a sofa, would we die? Nope. So we don't need a sofa. We want a sofa, and it serves a great purpose. It provides a lovely place to sit and relax and rest, a lovely place to sit and cuddle and snuggle as a family and read, a wonderful spot for guests to sit comfortably in our home, and for us to be able to offer our hospitality and comfort to our guests. But we don't need a sofa. It's just a luxury, a huge luxury. We can sit on the floor and still be alive, right? And you can see their brains working like, oh yeah. And so when we talked about really what we need, they were like, that's it? I'm like, yeah. You need to eat food. So you need food or you'll die. You need water or you'll die. You need shelter or you'll definitely be sick and unhealthy. And you need clothing. I don't know. Could you die without clothing? I guess not. But you definitely need clothing, right? Or else you would just be alone all the time in your house, naked. So it's just really interesting to watch a child realize, oh. And so everything else is a blessing from God. Everything else, everything else is a blessing and a gift and a luxury from God. So it's really neat how a trip to Africa is what opened this woman's eyes to how we live in abundance in America. And even the poor in America are not so poor. And I've never gone somewhere and seen people live in poverty, but I have heard countless stories of people that have and come back completely changed forever, because it really puts into perspective, like, wow, we live in extravagance unnecessarily. And then we just think this is how it should be. This is how it's supposed to be, and it needs to be. And the reality is, no, it isn't how it should be. It isn't how it needs to be, and it isn't how it has to be. Is it a blessing? Yes. We must not take it for granted and just think this is what we want and what we have to have. It's a blessing. Let's give God the glory for it and thank him. And then if it goes away tomorrow, it's okay. Yeah. So she asked 5,000 people, right, about what their kids own, and 3,300-ish answered. And there was a very high percentage of children that owned, 74%, an iPod or a Kindle. And we have a Kindle Fire, but only by force. It was a grandparent's gift, and we would not own that if it had not been for the nice gift. 55% have a cell phone. No. 30% have a TV in their room. That is asking for trouble, you guys. And the cell phone. Oh, so many things. It just, my mind goes, directly to pornography, sexual immorality, sexual temptation. If a child has a TV in their room, I guarantee you they're watching things they shouldn't be. I guarantee you they're hearing things and seeing things that they shouldn't be. They're learning things they shouldn't be. Take the TV out of their room, I beg you. Do you remember having a TV in your room? I do. I was watching things, hearing things, learning things that I should not have been. Don't be naive. Remember what you did. Your child will do it too if you give them the opportunity. And that opens a huge can of outer behavior. I know that I was not a believer, but that doesn't mean that if your child is a believer, if the temptation is there, that they won't fall into it. Pluck the opportunities out of their lives. And then, of course, with age, with time, with growth, with sanctification, if they're believers, the Lord is doing a work in them. We can't be over them all the time, and we can't only worry about their outward behavior. But having a TV in the room is it's a very wise decision to not have it. So just throwing that out there. I don't want to go in that long, very complicated direction because that's not our conversation, but we can talk about that in the comments if we need to. And then 35% have a laptop or computer, 16% have a car of their own, 5% have a debit or credit card for their parents' account. So that was interesting. And then the Christmas morning she described, we had one like that. And never again. Never again. Before kids, I always thought, we're not going to get a lot of stuff for Christmas. No, all they need is one or two things that they're just going to love and play with forever, you know? And we realized quickly, it's fun to shop for your kids because you love them and you want to bless them and you want to see them get things that they enjoy and that they want to play with and just so excited to give them things that they're going to love. Okay, we fell into that trap. Maybe 3 Christmases ago, we got them maybe 6 things each, and it was really affordable. It was less than $200 to get everything for them, but we did not factor in aunts, uncles, grandparents, and 3 sets of grandparents, aunts, uncles, yada, yada, yada. So it was not enjoyable. It was heartbreaking, actually. Exactly how she described. Ripping paper, one thing to the next. Didn't even have time to look at what you just opened because there's something else being opened. And then this arguing started happening. This greed came over them. This that one's mine, that one. I was like, what is happening to my little 4-year-old? What is happening? It was horrible, horrible. Never again. I immediately, after all that, later in the day, I told my mother and my husband, I never want a Christmas like this again. Did you see our children transform right before our eyes? Did you see the greed take over them? Did you see that they couldn't even figure out what they wanted to play with because there was so much? And then when they finally did decide, they played with one thing for 3 days. They don't need 20 toys, you guys.